The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.
Changes introduced in the procedure of implementation of international sanctions by the National Bank impose a threat to the macroeconomic stability in the country and to its international reputation outside the country. First, applied changes to the rules for the implementation of sanctions for Georgian citizens raise concerns about the independence of the bank's decisions from political influences. Second, it led to the resignation of the bank's top-ranking professionals and decision-makers, namely all three vice governors of the NBG and the advisor resigned based on disagreement with the subject decision. This creates an unprecedented institutional crisis and undermines both the bank's internal professional capacity as well as its reputation. Third, the NBG decision gives power in the application of sanctions to the judicial sector, the independence of which has been internationally questioned, and it is a precondition for Georgia receiving the EU candidate status. Fourth, this change caused concerns in the commercial banking sector and already negatively affected the exchange rate of lari. We hope that the National Bank will reconsider its decision and implement international sanctions in full accordance with international obligations. We advise the bank to urgently address the crisis of internal professional resources and take measures to prevent damage to both its own and the country's international reputation. Asset Policy Institute responded to the recent developments around the National Bank of Georgia, NBG. NBG must maintain its independence free from political influence and turbulence. It is crucial for Georgia to uphold its commitments to international agreements on matters such as money laundering, counterterrorism measures, and other global standards. Failing to do so could jeopardize Georgia's financial sector and its interests. To achieve economic development and financial stability, Georgia needs its banks to be integrated into the international financial system. We count on all state institutions to support NBG in overcoming the management crisis and within their competence to ensure its independence and compliance with international standards, thus safeguarding NBG's effective operation in accordance with international agreements, constitution, and the legislation of Georgia. PMCG Policy and Management Consulting Group responded to the recent developments around the National Bank of Georgia, NBG. This is The Checkpoints. I'm Elena Kvanchilashvili, author and the host of the show, and the Checkpoints team is ready to sum up business and economics week for you. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has concerns over the decision made by Georgia National Bank, NBG, to change its approach on international financial sanctions. The mission head for Georgia, James John, told BMG in a written statement that the IMF will have discussions with NBG and commercial banks on this issue. As we said earlier, quick and appropriate NBG action helped limit the impact of Russia's war in Ukraine on the financial sector, including by requiring banks to adhere to relevant sanctions. We have concerns regarding the recent announcement by the NBG to alter its approach to sanctions. We look forward to discussing these with the NBG and private banks and can then make a fuller assessment, including to consider potential implications for Georgia's IMF-supported program and our ongoing efforts to put it back on track, James John said. Following the statement from James John, Natia Turnau on Thursday met Andrew Jewell, the permanent representative of the International Monetary Fund in Georgia, to explain the controversial recent amendments in the regulation on the body's compliance with the international financial sanctions against Russia that exempted citizens of the country from domestic sanctions without court rulings. The National Bank said Turnau confirmed to Jewell that all regulations and restrictions imposed on Russia for its invasion of Ukraine by the United States, the European Union, and the United Kingdom would be maintained. The National Bank of Georgia attaches special importance to cooperation with the International Monetary Fund. At the meeting, we agreed that intensive communication with the fund will continue in the future. We are ready to give comprehensive answers to any questions, Turnau said after the meeting. The IMF restrains itself from disclosing any details of the meeting and keeps silence on this meeting with the NBG acting president. The NBG also said it was in intensive communication communication with the domestic financial sector, international financial institutions, and all interested parties on the matter. The development followed the bank's reversal on Tuesday of its decree to sanction Otar Partsxaladze, the former prosecutor general of the country, after he was last week sanctioned by the United States Department of State for alleged ties with Russia. In the U-turn, the NBG said it was amending its regulations to exempt the country's nationals from domestic sanctions without court authorization, a decision followed by resignation of several members of the bank's board and 3 of its vice presidents. Salome Zurabishvili, the president of Georgia, on Wednesday called for the resignation of Turnava and alleged the latter had succumbed to threats by the ruling Georgian Dream Party following the original decision to sanction Partsxaladze. The brief timeline would look like this. The National Bank issued an exemption rule for the enforcement of international financial sanctions on September 19, 2023. According to the new rule, international sanctions apply on Georgian citizens only if the Georgian courts make such a decision. On September 20, the interim governor of NBG, Natia Turnava, made a statement that this new rule is not tailored to specific persons, including the former general prosecutor of Georgia, Mr. Otar Partsxaladze, who was sanctioned by the U.S. on September 14. On September 19, in protest to Turnava's decision, 3 vice governors of NBG resigned. In a rush move, the parliament of Georgia has elected Nana Keinishvili and Teimuras Khomeriki as members of the board of the National Bank, nominated by the president. Both candidates received overwhelming support in the vote, with 84 MPs voting for Nana Keinishvili and 82 MPs voting for Teimuras Khomeriki. However, the candidates did not attend the joint session of the Financial, Budgetary and Sectoral Economy and Economic Policy Committees, where their candidacies were to be discussed. Georgi Makhiladze, the parliamentary secretary of the president, noted at the committee session that the Georgian president deems it inappropriate to nominate new candidates in parliament until certain issues are addressed. In particular, the relevant order by the acting president is revoked and the situation surrounding the National Bank is rectified. Even though the candidates did not attend the meeting, a vote took place and the committee members did not support them. As of now, there are only 7 members of the board of the National Bank of Georgia instead of 9.
Well, I will say I have no intention of resigning. I'm not going to resign. And so that's your answer to your first question. I'm very sensitive to the need and the value of having due process before people's property is taken or seized. At the same time, the failure to enforce the sanctions exposes the commercial banks to having their relationships with their correspondent banks outside the country jeopardized. And so we have competing pressures, if you will. It's not a simple situation. There are a lot of competing factors. And one reason why I'm staying on the board is to try to help to guide the board through trying to find some solution here. I've spoken to all 3 of the vice governors. We've discussed their reasons for taking the decisions that they did. They certainly were not asked to leave. That's not the situation at all. They will be with us for another 2 months after the submission of their resignation letters, and I hope in the next 2 months we'll still be working together to try to find some solution to this. The resignations are all about a difference on policy, and so we are all going to be working together over the next 2 months to try to figure out a solution to these competing factors.
3 NBG board members resigned yesterday, though the decision will take effect in 2 months from November 21st as per the law. Babuna Lejava, 12 years of international practical and academic experience in banking, risk management, financial markets, investment management, corporate finance, banking supervision, fiscal and monetary policy, development finance and economics, majority of professional experience in international settings, including in the United States, Italy, Spain, Bulgaria, and Georgia, experience in private equity, startup management, investor relations, and mergers and acquisitions. Archil Mestverishvili. Mestverishvili has been a member of the board and a vice president of the National Bank of Georgia since December of 2009. He was 2009. He was an acting vice president of the National Bank of Georgia from November 26 to December 1st of 2009. In 2005 and 2009, he was head of the Department of Macroeconomics and Statistics of the National Bank of Georgia. In 2004 and 2005, he was head of the Department of Economic Policy at the City Hall of Tbilisi. Mestverishvili was head of the Department of Economic, Monetary and Fiscal Policy at the administration of the President of Georgia in 2004. In 2002 and 2004, he was an economic researcher at the Department of Macroeconomics and Monetary Policy of the National Bank of Georgia. Then he held the post of the head of the Macroeconomic Research Division. He was a leading specialist at the Budget Office of the Parliament of Georgia in 1998 to 2000. Nicolas Gagua, his previous work experience includes the Deputy Minister of Finance, senior level positions at the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development of Georgia, National Statistics Office of Georgia, Stride Georgia Ltd, Internal Municipal Development Fund of Georgia, Tbilisi Waters Ltd, and so forth. Mr. Gagua holds a master's degree in policy economics from Williams College, Williamstown, USA, and bachelor's degree in international economic relations from Tbilisi State University, Georgia. At this point, two new candidates replacing them are Nanak Einishvili and Teimuras Khomeriki. Nanak Einishvili graduated from the Agrarian University of Georgia in 1986 with a major in horticulture and winery. In 2005, she earned a PhD in economic sciences and has held the position of academician at the FASIS International Secular Scientific Academy since 2022. Between 2012 and 2016, Einishvili served as a member of parliament from the ruling Georgian Dream Party, where she held the role of deputy chairperson of the Budget and Finance Committee. Additionally, from 2001 to 2012, she presided over the Red Cross Society in Georgia. And Teimuras Khomeriki holds a degree in economics and finance from Tbilisi State University. In 2004-2005, he obtained a master's degree in public finance from the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies. Additionally, Khomeriki pursued studies in development economics and international development at the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies in Geneva. Throughout his career, he has served as a program manager at the Swiss Cooperation Office for the South Caucasus and worked with the Budget Office of the Parliament of Georgia, among other roles. How does the crisis within the NBG affect investment climate in Georgia, and what are some of the risks associated with Natia Turnava's unilateral decision? How does the crisis affect one most important thing in doing business, trust? Fadi Asli, chairman of ICC Georgia, sat down with the checkpoints. Mr. Asli, thank you for being with us and taking our questions. The International Monetary Fund has concerns over the decision made by Georgia National Bank to change its approach on international financial sanctions. This is what the mission head, James John, told us in a written statement. What does this mean for Georgia, its citizens? And I don't mean only investors, businesses at this point, like all of us.
Let's start with the change of legislation, which is something that surprised the whole world, not only the Georgians or the embassies accredited here and international financial institutions. This is a direct message to the international community that we don't want to comply by the sanctions. You know, you can do many things as a government, but you cannot escape international law and international procedures. Even Russia did not come with such a very creative approach to shortcut sanctions. This is a novelty. There is no country in the world that has done it. And it's a message that the government doesn't want to comply with the sanctions in case they are themselves under sanctions. And this whole panic when Parskhalaze was and hysteria when Parskhalaze was sanctioned, it is because the government of Georgia realized that the knife was getting very close to their throat. So they thought that they would come with a smart mechanism to mitigate the effect of the sanctions. And this is a very provincial and very amateurish and ignorant way of handling issues as serious as sanctions. Now, when we come back to the IMF, you know that the IMF had a very clear position regarding the creation of this new position, which is deputy governor, because they anticipated that the government would come with something like they have done 2 days ago. And they didn't want this to happen. They really wanted the National Bank to be a real independent institution to keep stability in the financial markets in Georgia and in Georgia in general, because when the financial market, the financial sector is stable, then the country is stable economically. And that's why now, you know, they will look, but you know, the IMF directly doesn't have a big impact. The maximum they can do is we're stopping our program with Georgia, which is not the end of the world for the government of Georgia, because either way, you know, they have pretty big reserves of foreign currency, and they can close their debts, and so it's not a big thing. But what is very worrying goes beyond the IMF. There are two things that are very worrying. The first thing is, as you know, the Georgian banks, most of them work with this Austrian bank, Raiffeisen, is clearing the international forex transactions for the Georgian banks. And currently, this bank is auditing several of the Georgian banks for their transactions to see if they were in conformity with the standards. A year ago, Deutsche Bank has decided to leave Georgia and not to play this role. And this Austrian bank took over. Now, if the Austrian bank feels that the changes in the regulations of the National Bank regarding sanctions can create any kind of problem, then they will withdraw. And if they withdraw, this means that the Georgian banks will be unable anymore to effect any international transaction in US dollar from Georgia. So you can imagine what will be the cost on the economy and how many companies will be like bankrupt because of something like this. This is the most serious effect that can happen in Georgia immediately.
Do you anticipate that this might come to that point?
Because you know they are taking it under their responsibility, this Austrian bank, you see. There is a big factor of trust with the financial players here. Now, when the factor of trust is lost, they cannot take responsibility themselves because they are liable towards the foreign government for it. And this can happen, and this can be of very serious concern for the economy. So this is the first thing. The second thing that will take more time are the secondary sanctions that the US government can slap on the National Bank of Georgia, on the people from the National Bank, on other players in the country because of this legislation that has been put in.
Yeah.
Before the sanction, there will definitely be a lot of diplomatic work that backtrack, otherwise this is what's going to happen. And you know what can happen? Georgia has $5 billion of foreign reserve, of US dollar reserves. They can be frozen. And the country will go bankrupt, you know, without reserves, you cannot import anything, you cannot move, you cannot pay your debts, you can't do anything. And in my opinion, the US Treasury is going to be ruthless when it comes to Georgia, because Georgia has created a precedent with this legislation that doesn't exist anywhere in the world. And if they close their eyes on this precedent, then you will have other countries just copy-pasting, okay? And this can have an effect on the efficiency of the sanction that the US government or the UK government or the EU governments are slapping on people and on countries around the world. So in my opinion, if the Georgian government will not backtrack and reverse this piece of legislation, it will be a very dark economic and financial period for Georgia.
But Natia Turnava tells us that Georgia has not been creating a will here, that this kind of rules are in many countries that are defending their own citizens, and that no one can have any criticism or any comment on the sovereign decision of the country to have its rules in compliance with the constitution.
Look, you know, it reminds me of a story. This is totally false, as a matter of fact. It's a blunt lie. It's not true. And it reminds me of a story when Christiane Amanpour, you remember the CNN anchor, her first interview in Iran. She is Iranian origin, like 25 years ago. I remember I watched it, and she had an interview with a newspaper editor, and she told him, "Do you have freedom of speech?" He told her, "Yes, we are free to write whatever we want, and they are free to arrest us whenever they want." And this is the same. This means that, yes, she can do whatever she wants, but they can slap sanctions on her whenever they want on the National Bank and freeze the assets of the National Bank and bankrupt the country. You know, the problem is that this government has a distorted image of themselves. They think that they are themselves the United States and the UK and Germany. This is how they see themselves. They don't realize that Georgia is a microscopic country that has no leverage over anyone in anything. And that's the problem. So we are in very big trouble. And as long as this legislation is in place, the pressure will remain very high on the Georgian lari, because people expect sanctions to be slapped on Georgia, and the National Bank will have to pay huge, to sell huge amounts of dollars.
We already see this.
We already had 57 million in 2 days. Tomorrow it will go even more, because people expect a reaction from the West regarding this attempt to shortcut the sanctions.
Today, after James John issued this statement to BMG, Natia Turnava met Andrew Jewell. He is the permanent representative of the IMF in Georgia. And the National Bank said Turnava confirmed to Jewell that all regulations and restrictions imposed on Russia for its invasion of Ukraine by the United States, the European Union, and the United Kingdom would be maintained. Is it contradictory then with the new rule?
Yes, of course it's contradictory, because already by allowing Parshaladze to transfer his money out of his bank accounts and his properties to a third party, they have already undermined the effect of the sanctions. And those sanctions relate to Russia. So this is not serious talk, but this is the kind of talk that the government of Georgia holds all the time. They go to the EU, they tell them we are doing the 12 points, we want to be members of the EU. You know, the whole government rhetoric is based on lies and on gaslighting, you know, like narcissists. They have the behavior of a narcissistic individual as a government. So it's all lies, all gaslighting. It's not true. I didn't tell you this. It's the opposite. You are making it up. This is that. And Natia is doing exactly the same thing that Kobakhidze does, and Dinaraze does, and Gharibashvili does. It's their tactics, their strategy is very well studied. Gaslighting, lying.
The members of the NBG's council, they said that this was the unilateral decision that Natia Turnava took by herself to impose and to enact this new rule. And this decision on a new rule was followed by resignation of 3 of the vice presidents. Would you say that NBG is in the institutional crisis today, and what that means to the financial market, to investors?
Look, I will tell you, you know, the whole financial sector of Georgia is based on trust and confidence. All the reports, international reports, have always spoken very highly of the independence of the National Bank, of its proficiency and efficiency and professionalism. And the banks as well, because they are well regulated by the National Bank, they have good reputation because they also follow all the criteria and the guidelines very thoroughly. So Georgia has a good reputation for its financial sector. As a matter of fact, the financial sector of Georgia, among all sectors, has the best reputation. So what Natia has done, the National Bank, she undermined the reputation, the reputability, the credibility of the National Bank, and that backfires on the commercial banks. And today there is an institutional crisis, not within the National Bank itself, because you know today they appointed two new board members that keep the quorum alive. But there is a very serious issue whereby there is a rebellion of the commercial bank against the regulation of the National Bank as far as sanctions. You know, the commercial banks are bound by law to follow scrupulously the regulation issued by the National Bank. And in case they don't, there are consequences to it. The banks made it very clear that we will not obey or abide by this new regulation. This means they are in discrepancy with the Georgian law. This means technically the National Bank can take measures against the commercial banks.
This is how you read the statements of the majority of Georgian commercial banks when they said that we stand by international.
Absolutely, and they are right. And they are right, because you know, if they follow the orders of Natia Turnava, then they would be in discrepancy with international sanctions, and then you know their assets will be frozen, the Visa cards, MasterCards will be abolished in one day, they will be unable to do any transaction, and they will become like banks in Turkmenistan, like working internally with their local currency. So between choosing sanctions coming from the National Bank or sanctions coming from the West, they didn't hesitate a second, because the value of their banks will go down the drain in no time. Yesterday, you know, Bank of Georgia and TBC yesterday lost, when this thing happened, about 3% and 3.5% of the value of their shares in London. Then, after they made their statement, the shares started climbing, They didn't reach yet the level of 2 days ago, but they will reach it as long as there is some stability. So this was just a rumor, and look what happened. So imagine there is a sanction on one of those banks or on those two banks. They will go, I mean, the value of the share will be zero, and the whole economy will be bankrupt. They represent 80% of our economy, the two banks.
Yes, the Parliament of Georgia has elected Nana Qeynishvili and Teimuraz Khomeriki as members of the board of the National Bank of Georgia. They were both nominated by the president. Then president said that she wanted to take back these nominations, but unfortunately the law does not have that kind of provision. The candidates yesterday did not attend the joint session of Financial, Budgetary and Sectoral Economy and Economic Policy committees. Then the vote at these committees took place, and the committee members did not support them. Yet both candidates received overwhelming support in the vote today. What does this process show about the things that we have been discussing here, about the independence of NBG, and about the influences, the external influences, possible influences on NBG?
It shows that the NBG now has become like the Georgian judiciary, like any other institution that is 100% controlled by the Georgian dream. You know, they will spend the $5 billion to sustain the Georgian lari and keep the regulation as is to save themselves from sanctions. they don't care about it. They will do it even if it will bankrupt the country. So this is bad governance. This is state capture. This is corruption. This is dictatorship. Those are the adjectives that describe our current government. And I mean, if you ask me, I'm optimistic. It's been a long time, I'm very pessimistic, but I don't think I ever reached the stage of pessimism that I reached today. Having said that, this pessimism is coupled with a big optimism, because you know, there is a limit to which they can push. And they really not reached their limit, they exceeded their limit with this, you know. They have been digging their grave since 12 years, but yesterday, they dug as much in one day as they have been digging in 12 years. You know, they have the whole world against them now. The whole world against them, not only internally. I mean, besides Russia and China, even China, you know, I mean, China, when it comes to their interest, they will not even look at Georgia, because Georgia represents nothing for them. It's like a neighborhood in in Beijing, okay? It's nothing. So, besides Russia, no one supports the Georgian government. No one at all. And at one stage, the whole world will decide that either we're going to lose Georgia forever, it will become, it will annex with Russia. This is the way we are going. Or we need to do something to straighten things. And I think we are getting very close to this point where people are really fed up with this government, with their lies, with their dictatorship, with their attitude, with serving the Russian interests, with being a Russian proxy here. I mean, everyone is really fed up everywhere.
ICC is the largest foreign business association, and you also have ambassadors of different countries in Georgia on board. Do you get questions about the situation in Georgia right now, or is it clear what's going on, or what are some of the main questions that you are getting?
A few years ago, like 2-3 years ago, we used to get a lot of questions because the attitude of the Georgian government was very pro-European, okay? And then the government, the international chancelleries here, all the embassies, they were convinced that, you know, the government was really doing their best to take Georgia to Europe. So every time there was something not clear, like the Gavrilov night and all those things, they would contact us and they would ask us. But since a year and a half, it has become very obvious to everybody that this government is a Russian government, and all their talks about wanting to be part of the EU is just rhetoric, which is based on nothing true. So that's why no one contacts us, nor contact any other business organization to get clarification, because the message is very clear. They don't need to clarify. They understood that this government is doing anything in their power to undermine and destroy the accession of Georgia to the EU. Okay, they're doing everything in their power. They understood it, and now they are like trying still to throw a carrot every now and then, but the baton is getting bigger. So this is where we stand.
You mentioned EU several times in the session to EU, and let me read you the tweet that the German ambassador in Georgia tweeted. No about EU. Article 130 of the EU Treaty prescribes the independence of European Central Bank and national central banks in the EU and commits EU and governments of EU member states to respect this principle. How do you read this tweet in the context that just less than a month is left for the due EU assessment on Georgia's progress on 12 priorities?
It is good that the ambassador made the statement, because, you know, I mean, even if it is useless because they don't care, the government don't care anymore of what the EU says, still it is important to talk for the EU to talk about it, to underline the weaknesses, to underline the things that need to be changed for good order. But as a French proverb says, no one is more deaf than the person who doesn't want to listen. They just don't, the government doesn't want to listen, okay? Look, The government are in survival mode. They are on death row, and they know it. They will do anything to remain in power, because the minute they are out of power, most of them will be in jail. Who would do something like Natia Tournavo? I mean, this is like unheard of in any country of the world. Who would do it? This is a sign of their panic.
And we started with the IFI, and let me finish with the question on IFIs as well. We remember the changes that were coming to the NBG about its supervision service, and then changes to the law. And there we remember that together with the IFIs stood three other IFIs, with the IMF stood three other IFIs as well, EBRD, ADB, and World Bank. And they also had strict recommendations not to do that. This time, when it came to the questions of whether the NBG would stay independent or not, we didn't hear those voices. We don't hear them till now. All the IFIs are saying that they are reviewing the situation, that they are monitoring the situation, and will come back with the comments later. Why do you think that
I will tell you, because you know this is a political decision to be taken. It's not a technical decision. The heads of the IFI here report to their headquarters, and their headquarters report to their shareholders that are the countries. Most of them, their shareholders are countries, and the shareholders wait for political instructions from their leadership. And that's why no one will say anything, and I believe that you will not hear them saying anything. I believe that you will see actions taken by the US government and by the European Union before you hear any IFI saying anything. This is my personal opinion. There will be action. As I told you before, Georgia cannot set a precedent with this and the United States government keep their eyes closed. It's impossible, because they're setting a precedent to try to curtail the sanctions. So, if through diplomatic means they will not backtrack, then there will be very painful measures, like really very painful measures. That will be a lesson for other countries. Don't try to outsmart us.
What else in the economy this week? Let us review our brief weekly news and outlook.
In Q2 2023, the nominal gross domestic product amounted to 19.3 billion lari. The real GDP increased by 7.5% year-over-year, while the GPT deflator percentage change equal to 2%, according to the National Statistics Office of Georgia. Significant contribution to the real GDP growth in Q2 2023 is related to increase of value added of the following activities: wholesale and retail trade, repair of motor vehicles and motorcycles, construction, education, information and communication, public administration and defense, compulsory social security, transportation and storage, administrative and support service activities. A decrease in the real value added occurred in agriculture, forestry and fishing, manufacturing, electricity, gas, steam and air conditioning supply. The largest share in GDP by activities is held by trade and real estate activities, followed by manufacturing, construction, agriculture, forestry, fishing, public administration, transportation and storage, education. Revised data will be published by November 15, 2023. Tbilisi City Hall will cover the cost of medicines and medical analysis for the beneficiaries of the multiple sclerosis program despite their social status, said Tbilisi Mayor Kakha Kaladze at the municipal government meeting on Wednesday. Kakha Kaladze explained that the program previously covered 80% of expenses, adding that the approximately 25,000 lari will be allocated annually per capita to finance medicines and high-tech research within the framework of the program. Multiple sclerosis program was launched in 2021. Beneficiaries of the program are Georgian citizens aged 15-60 registered in Tbilisi. The parliament rejects the draft law on the oligarchization. Andrei Orkhanashvili, the chairman of the Legal Issue Committee, presented the draft law in the third reading at the plenary session. However, he noted the discussion was formal and he appealed to his colleagues not to support the draft during the voting. Regulating the issue of the oligarchization through the law was not our know-how. The structures of the European Union approved the regulation of the issue by law in Ukraine, and we followed the approach approved by European Union. But since there is a proposal of European Commission that the issue should not be regulated by law but by an action plan, we suggest not to support the project during the voting. Andrei Orkhanashvili addressed the parliament. Georgian Dream chairman Irakli Kobakhidze made a statement on the same topic on September 18. According to Kobakhidze, Georgian EU Integration Commission under the government has already approved the project of the oligarchization action plan, which will be finalized after additional consultations with the European Commission. The draft action plan of the oligarchization will be sent to Venice Commission by the end of this week. Accordingly, under the conditions of approval of the action plan, the law on the oligarchization approved by the parliament in two readings lost its practical relevance. According to the Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development, Levan Davitashvili, two bidders in the tender announced for the construction of the port of Anaklia moved to the stage of submitting proposals. As the minister noted, one of the companies is a Swiss Luxembourgish one and the other is a Chinese-Singaporean consortium. The minister spoke about this at the plenary session of the parliament, where he is being heard through interpellation. He didn't name the companies that passed to the next stage of the competition due to the confidentiality. In addition, as Davitashvili noted, no Russian company participated in the competition. Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili on Friday met Ahmed Al-Khatib, the Minister of Tourism of Saudi Arabia, to discuss cooperation and define future plans. The government administration cited Garibashvili as saying tourism was a rapidly growing sector of the Georgian economy, while Saudi Arabia was a strategic and attractive market for Georgia. At the meeting, Garibashvili welcomed Saudi initiatives towards principles of sustainable tourism, innovations and education. The Georgian Prime Minister expressed his gratitude towards the Saudi government for granting an opportunity of travel with digital visas to the citizens of Georgia, noting the move would facilitate an increased flow of tourists between the two countries. The administration said prospects of future cooperations were also discussed at the meeting in the areas of renewable energy, real estate and logistics hubs. Families affected by hail and strong winds in the eastern Georgian region of Kakheti on Sunday will receive compensation for damage caused by the weather, the government administration said on Monday. The decision made on the initiative of the Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili will aim to help the locals whose property and farms were damaged as the adverse weather conditions hit the locally overnight between Sunday and Monday. Georgi Aladashvili, the state representative in Kakheti, said all relevant agencies were mobilized to respond to the damage caused by the weather and added damage were being measured. The hail and wind damaged houses, cars, vineyards and agriculture fields in Tel Aviv, Vareli and Lagodehi municipalities, while also unrooting trees and drawing power lines. In 8 months 2023, Georgia received income of $180 million from transit trailers. According to the data of State Treasury, over 338,000 transit trailers passed through the corridor of Georgia in January-August, of which only over 47,000 trucks paid road usage tax in August. They contributed 16.4 million lari to the budget. The number of trailers has increased compared to July. The increase in revenue from road use was caused by two factors. Freight shipment increased in the corridor of Georgia and the price of road use increased from 2022. If each trailer paid 200 lari from road usage until June 2022, after June 20, the tax increased to 350 lari.
The Asian Development Bank, ADB, expects Georgia's gross domestic product, GDP, to be 6% in 2023, reads an updated Asian development outlook for September 2023. According to the document, this is 1.5 percentage points more than the ADB's April forecast. The bank expects 5% economic growth in Georgia next year, unchanged from the previous forecast. The ADB predicts that the economy of the Caucasus and Central Asia region will grow 4.6% this year, 0.2% more than the previous forecast, and 4.7%, 0.1% more than the previous forecast next year. The Asian Development Bank, ADB, has appointed Leslie Birman Lam as its new country director for Georgia. She joined the Georgia resident mission today to officially begin her role as country director. Ms. Lam will lead ADB operations in the Caucasus nation, managing the bank's relationship with the government, development partners, and other stakeholders. Among her top priorities will be the supervision of the preparation of ADB's new country partnership strategy for Georgia 2024-2028, which will continue to help the country to advance inclusive, resilient, and environmentally sustainable growth. It's an honor to assume my new position at ADB's country director for Georgia and build upon the bank's strong and enduring partnership with the country, said Ms. Lam. ADB will continue to support transformative investments in a range of sectors and priority reforms to advance Georgia's ambitious development agenda. Regional cooperation and integration initiatives under the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation CAREC program remain an integral part of ADB operations in Georgia. Ms. Lam, a United States national, has more than 30 years professional experience, including about 2 decades with ADB. She joined ADB in 2002 and has since served in a range of senior positions across the bank. Ms. Lam was most recently ADB's representative for North America, where she helped mobilize support for ADB's developing member countries. Previously, Ms. Lam also held the bank's strategy and policy development coordination for key strategic and institutional considerations relating to non-sovereign operations, public-private partnerships, and engagement with state-owned enterprises. She has also led ADB's participation in G20 activities and chaired ADB's Blended Finance Committee. She replaces Shane Rosenthal, who was appointed Regional Director of ADB's Pacific Liaison and Coordination Office. Since Georgia joined ADB in 2007, ADB has become one of the country's largest multilateral development partners, with sovereign and private sector loans totaling about $3.9 billion USD. The bank's key development priorities in Georgia include fostering inclusive and sustainable economic growth, reducing poverty, enhancing regional connectivity, and improving public service delivery. In all these objectives, a sound and strong business sector plays a crucial role. Natia Taktakishvili will tell us more about this week's business news and outlook.
Company Ajara Group Holding opened the 4th Hotel of Rooms Hotel in Batumi last week. A 120-room hotel will offer high-quality cuisine, which is a mixture of Georgian and American gastronomy. The hotel has 2 conference halls and event spaces. There is a lobby bar. The guests can relax and work in a comfortable environment. Valery Checheria, director of Rooms Hotel, declares at this stage 75 rooms are operational out of 120 rooms. He notes that 99% of guests are Georgians. The hotel will be fully opened in about a month. The management plans to add various services to the hotel from spring 2024. The seasonal restaurant room's kitchen will be opened on the floor of the hotel building next year, which will have a large bar, pool, and massage rooms. This year, the average cost of accommodation in Rooms Batumi will be $135 USD. However, from next year, after all services will be launched, the average annual price will increase to about $165 USD, said the director of Rooms Hotel. Digital platform Horsters was launched. Anna Nadiradze, the founder of Horsters.g, declares that the interest in the online platform from foreigners is much higher compared to the locals. Horsters.g is an innovative platform that brings together all types of horses in one space, as well as rental of ranches. According to the founder, the interest in equestrian tourism is growing, which is also confirmed by the fact that the number of horse users increased to 2,800 this year instead of 534 as of last year. The company offers equestrian tours to any type of customers with any experience and budget. Speaking about future plans, the founder of Horse.g notes that after fully exploiting the equestrian potential of Georgia, the company plans to enter the market of Kazakhstan and Turkey. Georgian dry fruit producing brand Kerki offers its customers dried fruit churchkhela and dried fruit leather for the last 2 years. After the successful exports to the Baltic countries, the company plans to enter the US market as well. Marketing and sales manager of Kerki, Nino Rasulidze, spoke about the company's plans with BMWG. In addition to a strong position in the local market, our main goal is to export our products abroad. Kerki products are exported to the Baltic countries at the first stage. We have selected dried mandarin and dried fruit leather for the exports. As for the latest news, at this stage we are negotiating with the American side because we want Kerki to be available to the US market as well. We are actively working in this direction, and the enterprise already has an FDA certificate without which it cannot be exported to the American market, noted Nino Rasulidze. Kerki Enterprise was launched in 2021 and is located in Kedaraja region. The company mainly employs local people. Kerki products can be purchased at the supermarket chains of Goodwill, Aeroproduct, Waymart, and Smart. Hotel Art Raja, located in Raja, hosted the first vacationers this summer. The family hotel is designed for about 18 people and it offers tours and master classes along with accommodation in the hotel. As for the price policy, the cost of accommodation in the hotel ranges from 90 lari to 180 lari. As Mariam Jarhalashvili, the founder of the hotel, spoke on the air of TV program Women's Narrative, the first season was quite successful and the occupancy of the hotel was satisfactory. The idea of opening a hotel came several years ago. Initially, this decision was associated with many challenges, so opening process was postponed several times. Finally, we took part in several grand competitions and implemented the idea. Mariam Charkhalashvili notes. The founder of Art Raja also spoke about the future plans. According to her, the plan is to add a cottage and a catering facility. Barbara Mekhrishvili, the founder of furniture company Hometa, declares that furniture has become more expensive by 20-30% year over year. The head of the company notes that the main reason for price increase of furniture is the raw material price growth, which is fully imported. The increased price by the supplier directly affects the cost of the product. According to the founder of Hometa, the company offers its customers three price categories. It provides an opportunity to meet the demands of different customer segments equally. Our price category is standard, middle, and high class. The cost of 1 square meter starts from 300 lari and may go up to 1,200 lari depending on the raw material and furniture design, says Barbara Mekhrishvili, the founder of Hometa. Hotel Black Tomato, located in Kutaisi, hosts the guests in the renovated environment. Elena Zamtaradze, the founder of the Hotel Black Tomato, told BMWG that the hotel combines 7 private and 2 shared rooms, a terrace, a yard, and a restaurant. We have improved the infrastructure and services. We remain committed to our 5 main companies, which are central location, interesting interior, friendly and guest-focused service, affordable prices, and spaces for socializing. It's important for us to have these components together, she added. According to the founder, the brand has improved the comfort. The idea was to have diversified rooms from the beginning. So today, Black Tomato has standard, superior, and panoramic rooms. The price ranges from 100 lari to 240 lari depending on the categories. Currently, the hotel load amounts to 77.5%. Expectations are high for the winter season. The hotel combines 24 rooms and can accommodate up to 40 guests in total. Wooden toys and furniture manufacturing company Gogora is preparing for exports. The founder of the company, Nino Razmadze, told BMWG that negotiations with several countries have already started. Germany, England, USA, these are the countries with which we are conducting active negotiations. They are currently waiting for a price offer from us, she added. Speaking about future plans, the founder notes that the company is working on the expansion of the Tbilisi enterprise, for which 45,000 lari has been invested. In addition, Razmadze notes that Enterprise Georgia allocated 30,000 lari. As a result, Gogora purchased basic equipment for Tbilisi Enterprise. Company Gogora was founded in 2021. Product price ranges from 80 lari to 500 lari. Iago Bitarishvili, the founder of Iagos Wine, declares that the wine seller is expecting 60% less harvest this year due to the hail. According to him, the current year was one of the most difficult years for wine growers because the climatic condition affected all regions throughout Georgia. Therefore, they expect a low-quality grape harvest this year, which is in itself will have a negative impact on the quality of the wine. Iago Bitarishvili also points out that the current reality is especially a challenge for small wineries, those who don't have wine stocks from previous years, while large factories will get through the current difficult year relatively easily because they have appropriate reserves at the expense of which they can prevent disruption of continuous supply chain in the sales market. As for the mechanism for dealing with the climatic conditions, the winemaker believes that the state and wineries should be involved in this process jointly. Climatic cataclysms, unfortunately, will become more intense in the future, so it must be managed accordingly with preventive measures by using anti-hail mechanisms or making the insurance system more suitable for wine growers, says the founder of Iagos Wine in a conversation with BM.G.
And that's all for today. We will meet on Sunday, 11 a.m. sharp. Before that, check us out on BM.G for more updates on business and economics in Georgia and beyond.
The Checkpoints is presented by pharmaceutical company GM Pharma.